Part two of the San Francisco 49ers 53-man roster projection, talking about the offensive side of the ball today, but we got to revisit the D to really figure out the exact 53 that we like and some of the names we left out on part one that could still be in play for the 49ers. And after all this, could they keep only two quarterbacks? All that and more coming up on today's Locked On 49ers.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers, Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker. At BD Peacock, at Eric_Crocker. Thanks, everybody, for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. This is part two of our 53-man roster projection two-part episode. So if you want part one and talking more about the defense, you can go find that one. We are going to dip back into defense at the end of this one, though, because we got to figure out our numbers on offense to make sure we got the right numbers on defense to get to 53, Croc. And it starts with quarterback. And Kyle Shanahan made a short little comment that nobody really caught post-game because everyone's focused on Trey Lance and the Trey Lance trade. But he said he's not exactly certain that they're going to be taking three quarterbacks, and it's something they're going to have to talk about. Croc, if they need an extra roster spot for another player, they might find that player more valuable than Brandon Allen, might hope that they could get Brandon Allen back on the practice squad. After all this, Croc, do they only keep two quarterbacks, Purdy and Darnold? Because you know they love both those guys. But I kind of think they like Brandon Allen a lot, but maybe his play in the preseason wasn't good enough for them to justify a third quarterback roster spot.
I think they like bringing him back if they can, but maybe, did he do something or not do enough to really kind of move the needle to where it's like, hey, I know, and this is the part I have to try to explain to fans a lot of times. I get what the 49ers went through at the quarterback position last year. You do not see that ever. Like, that's very rare. That is like you get down to your third string quarterback and then eventually your fourth quarterback. Now, I say it's rare, but then I think, as I was saying that, I'm like, Miami Dolphins last year, because you had Tua, and then Teddy Bridgewater got knocked out of a game, and then all of a sudden they too were down to their third string quarterback, who I want to say was selected like the pick before Brock Purdy, I think.
Yeah, 7th rounder, Skylar Thompson, right?
Yeah, Skylar Thompson. So I guess maybe you can, but either way, they're probably not going to prioritize that third quarterback more than keeping an extra edge rusher or whatnot. So if they can figure out those things, and we also talked about in part one, the Nick Bosa effect, where you get to keep a guy a little bit longer, that might help a guy like Allen be able to stay on the roster until you have everything else kind of figured out. And then if you can keep him, great. But if you're only going to roll with two quarterbacks and hopefully bring your guy back or release Brandon Allen late, that would help him return back to the practice squad as well. What I'm saying is Nick Bosa, I talked about not signing him yet. He doesn't count against your 53-man roster. If it's like 5 days out and then eventually you release Allen to sign Nick Bosa, but then you want to bring Allen back on practice squad, other teams might be a little bit more solidified at the quarterback position at that time.
The other part of the equation is you might like a guy a little more, and if there's a tiebreaker, it's, okay, who's more likely to get claimed? Do the 49ers think that they'll get Brandon Allen back on the practice squad? Because if they knew that, they would not put him on the 53, right? So that's part of the equation as well, because someone like Ronnie Bell at wide receiver, he's going to get picked up, or more likely he's going to get picked up on waivers. Does that hurt you more than if you lost your third quarterback? So a lot of tough decisions. Let's go through it for us here, Croc, and project this 53-man roster. I still do have all three quarterbacks on here and have them taking three quarterbacks.
Yes, I agree with that.
Okay.
No issues there. I do wonder if you did not like, and there's the part where people like, the 49ers know more than you. We hear that a lot, right? You see that in the comments.
Right.
And I was saying, look, if Brock Purdy's your guy and you're all in on him, I get that you like Trey, but you have more value kind of trading him away. You can keep Sam Darnold. And why not draft a guy like Dorian Thompson-Robinson? And those were the things that we were saying. And now, kind of circle back around to it, how much better would you feel about the quarterback room if you just never had Trey this entire offseason, but your third quarterback was Dorian Thompson-Robinson, and seeing what he did with the Browns, which ultimately he ended up beating out who was the back? Dobbs?
Joshua Dobbs. Yeah,
Dobbs?
they sent Joshua Dobbs off because they were so convinced on DTR as their rookie backup quarterback.
Right. So you got to look at that, and it's like, man, a lot of ability. We talked a lot about him and potentially, like, 49ers should try to go get him. A lot of starts under his belt, played, 5 years at UCLA, leadership, all the things you're looking for in trade that he didn't quite have yet. DTR has a lot of those characteristics.
So the stat on DTR I just recently saw, and not to bring Trey Lance back into this, but it's too interesting. And since you brought up DTR, I hadn't talked about this yet on the podcast. This one from Sam Monson brought it to my attention from Pro Football Focus. Dorian Thompson-Robinson and Trey Lance, to show you how young Trey Lance is. This was a lot of guys drafted were part of his recruiting high school class that are rookies right now. DTR, one of those. So Dorian Thompson-Robinson and Trey Lance were in the same recruiting class coming out of high school. They both played as freshmen, but obviously we've seen what happened since for Trey. And Dorian Thompson-Robinson kept starting games at UCLA. Dorian Thompson-Robinson, when you combine NFL, or you combine college snaps, NFL, and regular season and preseason NFL. College, regular season, and preseason NFL playing time, Dorian Thompson-Robinson has 3 times more than Trey Lance, even though Lance in the NFL, because Dorian Thompson-Robinson played all this college ball. And I think that's one of the things we saw with Purdy. It's like smart to draft a college player who's played a lot of football in college and seen a lot of things. It helps.
In hindsight, especially with the Trey Lance situation.
With the Trey Lance situation, but we kind of already knew that. We've seen other young quarterbacks that have some trouble. And it's not, there are outliers for sure on either side, but it helps to have played a lot of football. But it's crazy how, and like Lance is still younger than Will Levis, and those types of things, just wild, where the whole Trey Lance thing is just so nuts. But 3 quarterbacks right now is what we got projected here. We got Brock Purdy, we got Sam Darnold, we got Brandon Allen making the roster. I think running back is about as easy as it gets. Croc, correct me if I'm wrong. Kyle Juszczyk at fullback, and then 4 running backs: Christian McCaffrey, Elijah Mitchell, Jordan Mason, Ty Davis Price. And that's it.
And Ty Davis Price and Jordan Mason, when you watch them, at least in that last preseason game, they look very interchangeable. Whereas, like, man, I just like the way both of these guys run. They still have slightly different running styles, even though they both have some size to them. But both of them look like they're figuring out, okay, how they can be successful at the NFL level, what it is being asked of them. And they both did it at a pretty high clip. And we still haven't seen Elijah Mitchell. That is the craziest thing. It's like, where is Elijah Mitchell? But the other 2 running backs, I think they ran very well.
And the 49ers might make some trades here, and who knows, maybe they swing a trade before a cut-down day. But Elijah Mitchell, I don't think is going to be one of them. I've seen a lot of people say, oh, maybe the 49ers trade Elijah Mitchell because of how Mason and TDP have looked good. And I'm like, no, man, are you crazy? You keep all the running backs. And even if Elijah Mitchell ends up getting hurt again this year, you have to prepare for that. That's why you have depth. That's why you have 4 guys. But I don't think there's any way the 49ers would go into the season without those 4 running backs. They've got a solid group. They're deep. They're all talented. You feel good about any of them needing to play. If McCaffrey goes down, you're good.
Yep.
And Jack Coletto's not going to sneak in it with 2 fullbacks. We talked about 2 kickers yesterday. We're not having 2 fullbacks on the roster, right?
I expect him to be on the practice squad.
I do as well. Okay. I think we could potentially borrow from the offense to help the defense and vice versa here. And I think wide receiver and D-line are the 2 spots that are the most variable, maybe DB a little bit as well. As we figure out this final 53, Croc. Next, we got to talk pass catchers, wide receivers, tight ends, and the depth on the offensive line is something to consider and maybe be worried about, or maybe just keep less guys there and let the practice squad fight it out for who gets called up eventually if you need an extra guy. We'll get into all that next. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by the Gametime app. With Gametime, you don't have to worry about last-minute tickets. You don't have to buy tickets for your favorite event months in advance, because buying tickets to your favorite events shouldn't be stressful. Gametime is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater. Whatever it is you need tickets for, you can find it at Gametime. Killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee. You can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you'll have at, say, a 49ers game, or maybe the next concert that's coming up that you want to go to, even if you're looking for those tickets a little bit last minute, as I tend to in my life, and I'm not good at planning ahead as it pertains to going to sporting events and going to see shows, because for some reason I'm bad at that kind of thing. And so it's nice to have an app like Gametime so you can open it up even the day of and find tickets to an event. All you do is you download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, just create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. You get images of your seat before you buy, so you know exactly what you can expect and where you're going to be sitting, and buy those tickets in a matter of seconds. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDON when you create an account for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Here we go, Croc. Wide receiver. What do you like at wide receiver? Who are your locks? And how are they going to navigate this thing with a couple of dinged up wide receivers in McLeod and Gray? Does that mean you have to keep 2 extra guys? Do you keep 1 extra guy? Debo, Ayuk, Jennings obviously are locked in. I would almost consider Ronnie Bell a lock at this point. Do you think the 49ers consider Ronnie Bell as a lock?
Yes, I have him not penciled in. He's in permanent marker.
Permanent marker. So we've got permanent marker for Debo, Ayuk, Jennings, and Bell.
Yes.
McLeod and Gray are both banged up, but these don't seem like they're long-term injuries. And if you want them to be on IR that they can return, they have to make the 53 first. So is that it potentially? And then you roll the dice with Conley and the veteran Snead as being your reserves and potentially getting snapped up, and hope that one of those guys gets back to your practice squad, or do you have one of them making it as well to complete the group and maybe keeping 7 guys on the initial 53?
Conley got banged up. When does he come back?
The latest I saw on Conley is day-to-day with a shoulder. Okay.
I don't feel bad about that then, especially with this whole almost 2 weeks before the next game. I have him making it. He is a veteran. It feels like he's maybe one of those guys, again, between Conley, Snead. There's going to be enough of these veterans where you say, you know what, we'll let you go, and we'll see. Whichever one of you guys clears waivers, we'll bring back the one we like most or the other one. So I think that's what they do with Conley. I have them keeping 5 receivers. Now, you talked about Danny Gray. You talked about Ray McLeod. Does a guy like Ronnie Bell allow you to keep Ray McLeod on IR all season and you say just rest your broken wrist? Or with Danny Gray, I don't know what's going on, but I would say this. If Ray McLeod was healthy, Danny Gray, he'd be in some trouble, I think, because we've seen just more from even Ronnie Bell coming in as a returner, as a receiver, just the areas that feel he's working. They threw screens to him. They felt more comfortable featuring him, with the reserves, but featuring him in the offense more than I've ever seen them do with Danny Gray.
And Gray, it was a shoulder injury. It ended up being a collarbone, right?
Correct.
And if that's an injury, it's going to take you multiple weeks and into the regular season. So then again, that would be sort of an IR to return guy if you did want to put him on IR. But again, if you put him on IR before the season, he's gone all season. He has to make the 53 first to be able to bring him back. So I think that's why it makes it difficult to keep a bunch of guys at wide receiver. And knowing that Bell could do multiple things for you, that locks him in. So to me, I think it is Debo, Ayuk, Jennings, McLeod, Gray, Bell as your 6 wide receivers.
And you don't have them keeping Conley.
I don't have them keeping Conley and rolling the dice there. And if they lose Conley, they'll be like, cool, but we like Snead too. But
how much do they like Danny Gray? Like what has Danny Gray done to where you're like, okay, I have to keep him on this roster over Conley, outside of you just, knowing like, well, Conley's older.
There's only one thing, and it's the draft pick that they gave up just last year to draft.
It was dang near a 4th round pick.
Oh,
they just got rid of a guy
and traded. Third rounder was actually a 4th rounder thing.
They just traded away a guy that they gave up 3. They used 3 first round picks on, and he played 4 games. You think they care about this guy that they essentially, he was literally the last pick in the 3rd round.
So we going Gray IR for the year?
I don't know what you do with Gray.
Conley. Is it?
I just would keep Conley. I would keep Conley over Gray. Like it's not even just from what we saw, again, working all areas of the field, even in preseason, even with the same type of opportunities, we just saw more. And then now the thing that could make the difference would be, well, as a returner, because Conley's not returning kicks or punts.
Right.
But the one time we saw Danny Gray do it, it was an average return, and he got hurt on it. So, and then Ronnie Bell comes in, and all the things you would have liked to see out of Danny Gray, he did it. So, again, this is not me trying to be harsh on Danny Gray. I just don't understand, like, what is the value of him at this point? And I understand that, you drafted him. I understand he's still young, but I just know more of what I'm getting from a guy like Ronnie Bell, and I know what I'm getting more from a guy like Chris Conley, who I think performed very well and was very consistent in practices and even in limited snaps in the preseason. I think he did very well. So, like, what's the benefit of keeping Gray around outside of, well, he was a 4th round draft pick or late 3rd last year?
That's about it. And the potential of what his speed could bring your offense. But we haven't really seen that come to fruition for Gray and the 49ers yet anyway. So, yeah. So it sounds like you're going to say Gray, IR, keep Conley, Bell, McLeod, Jennings, Ayuk, Debo.
This is roster politics, so maybe they keep him. But I wouldn't understand that over other guys. Unless I'm missing something that he's done that's extraordinary, that is like, well, Croc, you didn't see this, or you haven't seen him how he does this. But I've seen that with everybody else that we've been talking about. Like anything that you can talk about Danny Gray doing very well, we've seen it from the other guys, even winning vertically down the field. We've seen it we just saw it in the game with Chris Conley. Like, I mean, obviously that's how he hurt his shoulder, but we just saw him stretch the field, catch the ball down the sideline, make a diving catch. We saw it with Ronnie Bell in the Raiders game, stretch the field, catch the ball down the right sideline, making a terrific catch. Danny Gray, we saw it one time, and that's what you're supposed to be good at. These other guys have done everything else as well as making the catch that we want to see you do down the field. They're catching the slants, they're catching the digs, deep curl route, boom, I got it. Like, we're seeing all of those things with the other guys. And the one thing that you do well, that we've seen you do once, they've done that as well live in this preseason. So I know I'm kind of being hard on Danny Gray. I don't have anything against him. I would have a hard time truly understanding it over what other guys have given you.
Not a lot of utility there. And to boot, he's hurt enough to miss at least part of the season. But Croc, he's going on IR for this simulation. Gray goes to IR. Conley is the 6th wide receiver. Niners keeping 6 wide receivers. You know who's going to join him on that red shirt IR list? And that is Cam Latu at tight end. And this is a timely injury. I don't know if this was a fake injury. We might find some of those injuries that pop up out of nowhere for some of these players. We're like, wait, that guy was hurt. But Cam Latu has a meniscus injury that had some swelling, and surgery is possible and even likely potentially for Cameron Latu, which means that's going to be an easy decision for the 49ers to redshirt him, as bad as he looked in camp. And the 3rd rounder will be back-to-back 3rd rounders, or as Kyle and Croc might say, might as well be 4th rounders, going on IR for the 49ers. And that means there's potentially 4 or 3 spots at tight end. And the candidates for those are fellow rookie Braden Willis. Obviously, George Kittle's the only one locked in. He is the starting tight end. You have the veterans in Dwelly and Warner. And then you have Fumagalli, who made a push in camp as well to be considered for this roster. I think we can fit in 4, Croc. Who are your 4 if they do go with 4? Or do you think we need to pull from there? And actually, no, let's talk 4. Then we'll pull from there as we finish this 53, if we need to.
Yeah. Assuming Latu goes to IR and you kind of redshirt him, I got George Kittle, Dwelly, Warner, and Braden Willis. I know there's a lot of people that like Fumagalli, but I just feel like the 4 that I just mentioned, we've seen them with the 49ers outside of obviously the rookie, but it's like, all right, let me keep this rookie around like he thinks he's done. I'm surprised he didn't utilize him more, especially in the passing game, kind of feature him a little bit more, especially like when you saw them start to do that with Latu. Latu came on very strong in the Broncos game, but Yeah, I'm going with Kittle, Dwelly, Warner, and Willis.
That's what I have too. I have those 4, and Fumagalli kind of gets the Willie Snead treatment, and you hope to get him back to the practice squad and provide you for some depth later down the line during the season.
Right.
Okay, so that means if we keep the 9 DBs, the 9 defensive linemen, that leaves us with 9 more spots on the roster for offensive lineman, Croc. So I think we can do this. We have the 5 starters: Trent Williams, Aaron Banks. You got Brendel at center. You got McKivitz at right tackle, and you got Spencer Burford at right guard. Those are clearly all locked in. So I think a darn near lock at this point is Jalen Moore, because he's the only player that's been playing as Trent Williams' backup, even when the ones are on the field in practice in the preseason games. And he also had a nice game to finish it off in preseason game number 3. We talked about post game how the pass blocking looked a lot better. I think Jalen Moore was part of that. So Jalen Moore for me is a pretty easy number 6, and then you got to find your best 3 backups after that, or you could potentially take less if you want one more of these defensive players. So what do you like on the offensive line, Croc?
So essentially everybody that you just named, and then the 2 guys I had was Zakel and Feliciano, and I'm not very confident with either one of those.
I would not keep Zakel. I wouldn't even put him on the practice squad. I think he was the worst player on the 49ers in the preseason. The 49ers clearly like him, but man, getting beat, penalties. He didn't look good at left guard or right guard. Maybe slightly better at left guard, but I just don't see it with him at all. They thought maybe he could be center. They tried him to center, didn't like that either. So I would take Keith Ishmael. I would take El Manning. I would take Jason Poe all over Zakel. But the more I look at it here, the more I think maybe. Oh, and you know who another guy is who I think is not quite a lock, but maybe a nearer lock, is instead of having a swing tackle, it really seems like, again, there's some positions where I was surprised they didn't mix and match more in practice and especially in the preseason games. But Matt Pryor only played right tackle and Jalen Moore only played left tackle from what I saw in those preseason games. So I think they actually both make it. And instead of having one swing tackle, I think Jalen Moore's the backup on the left side and Matt Pryor's the backup on the right side.
Sounds like a lot of early on with Daniel Brunskill, who was the backup on the left side. Then on the right side, it was School. So kind of maybe following that same type of blueprint. Feliciano, you talked about guys getting beat and giving the penalties. Feliciano, I think he kind of dealt with the same thing.
So Feliciano's got positional flexibility, center and guard, and he's played a lot of all those positions in the NFL. So I think you're right on that one. So as the reserves after the top 5, we've got Moore, Feliciano, Pryor, which is 8. So do they go 9? Do they go 10? And who's that last guy if they go 9?
It sounds like Manning. What do you think?
Again, they didn't show Manning at guard, and I think that's probably his best position. If Manning makes the roster, he has to play more than just third string left tackle. And since they didn't show that, that tells me he's going to get cut and he's going to be on the practice squad. I would say the next guy, just judging by what I saw in the preseason, is Keith Ishmael, who kind of jumped Poe in that last game and got in first at right guard. And he was the third center after Feliciano as well. So at this point, it might only be 8, but I feel like they need another interior guy. So that's for me, it's either Poe or Ishmael or El Manning. If I saw more from El Manning inside, I would say it's him. But Ishmael, I think, is going to get the nod for me in my projection here. But any of those guys could go to the practice squad, and maybe the 49ers say, look, we'll call a guy up and we'll see who clears, and we'll go with 8 here and save a spot for somebody else on the other side of the ball.
I don't think it's going to be Poe. I think he just struggled just a little too much. Yeah. And he's undersized, and I think, for Poe, they should just start to look to see if they can potentially transition him into more of a fullback.
Oh, I would love to see that. It doesn't sound like they didn't really show anything with Poe. I wanted to see him take center snaps. I wanted to see him move around in an H-back, extra offensive line role. Have fun with him. He's got that skill set. They had no fun with Poe.
He looks like an extra in a movie or something. Like, you watch like the sports movies and just whoever they have, like they'll put some some pads on like this offensive lineman, but he's not.
Guy, but you're like, that guy's not 6'5". He's 5'9". He's not going to play offensive line.
Right. And he's like heavy in the midsection, but then like little legs. And that's what he looks like when I look out there and watch him at right guard.
The dude, the short, chubby dude in The Longest Yard, right?
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
More athletic though than that, but yeah, that's what it looks like.
Okay, I'm going to revisit the defense next, Croc, because I think there might be some potential for a little bit more next. Thanks, everybody, for making Locked On 49ers your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network. Make sure you are subscribed on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcast. Okay, here we go. Let's finish up this 53-man. This is a part 2, and we kind of gone through a lot of this. So I like exactly where we at on offense. So we got Purdy, Darnold, Allen. We've got 3 quarterbacks. We got 5 running backs. We got 6 wide receivers. We got 4 tight ends, and we've got 9 offensive linemen. I think we can even borrow and go 8 offensive linemen at first and then call somebody up later after some other roster mechanics have happened if the 49ers really don't feel threatened about any of the other offensive linemen not making it back to the practice squad. So we got 5 linebackers. I feel solid there. We got 3 special teams. Feel solid there. I want to talk again about DBs. We didn't mention a lot of Deshaun Jameson yesterday. Would you keep just Deshaun Jameson over any of those offensive linemen? Do you think he did enough on special teams to earn that role while Ray McLeod's out? Do you think he did enough on defense to prove he's valuable enough as your, what would be 5th, 6th corner, or even keep him over Isaiah Oliver altogether?
No, I don't think he did enough. Especially like you want to see kind of where he was going to make it was definitely going to be special teams. And I think just Ronnie Bell just outshined them. And I thought early on it looked like, oh man, they might lean more towards this kid, because I thought in the Raiders game he just looked better and more comfortable, just potentially being that playmaker's feel for it. It looked great, but then you fast forward a week and he kind of muffed it, and then you just see Ronnie Bell just stay very consistent or go kind of a little bit above and beyond. 28-yard punt return. It just started to look really good, and I'm like, it's probably going to be Ronnie Bell's gig. And that was the one way I felt like Jameson would make it. And now maybe he's just making plays all over the place at corner. You can say, you know what? At the very least, he has return ability, and he's a terrific cover guy. So, okay, we'll keep him, and he just might not be active on game day. But once Ronnie Bell kind of took control over the return thing, especially if he's like a reserve, I think it made it tough for Jameson to make the squad.
Of the guys we have projected to get cut, I think Deshaun Jameson and McCrary Ball would have the biggest opportunity to get picked up by another team. I think Quantrez Knight potentially as well. Those would be the tough ones for me. But we have all 3 of them getting cut. And this is what happens every year is you think your team's guys are not going to make it back, but every team feels this way. And very few guys do get claimed off of waivers. So we'll see what happens with some of those players. But I think we've got it here.
I expect him to come back on practice squad. I don't see anybody signing Jameson. And not that he's bad or anything. I just think I don't know if he did enough.
Right. Like if he was on another roster, would you say, oh, we're going to cut whoever to go pick up that guy and bring him in over Isaiah Oliver or whatever?
No.
And that's another thing the 49ers could do here. There might be a guy on another roster that gets cut that the 49ers decide to bring in offensive line depth or, DB depth or something like that. But Kyle doesn't really like doing that. Kyle even talked about cutting guys and getting down to his final 53, saying how he likes to bring guys back that he already knows. So we'll see a lot of guys that we're familiar with on the practice squad. I think Isaiah Winstead will make it back to the practice squad. I think a lot of players will make it back to the practice squad, and those are the players he likes to bring up and bring back onto the roster. So I think we're going to see a lot of familiar names there for sure. And that means that we've got it set here, Croc. 3 quarterbacks, 5 running backs, 6 wide receivers, 9 offensive linemen. Did we decide on the 9th? Is it El Manning?
Yeah, we'll go with Manning.
Okay, let's go El Manning, as I think he's got the most potential there, and he'll be sort of just playing. He can start practicing more on the interior, but they would need another interior guy for that last spot, I think. So Ishmael, Manning, Poe, Zakel. I actually think it's going to be Ishmael, but we'll see. That's the 9th spot on the offensive line. We've got 4 tight ends: Kittle, Dwelly, Warner, Willis. The defensive line: Hargrave, Armstead, Furl, Jackson, Kinlaw, Hyder, Givens, Bryant, and McGill. And Bosa does not count against the initial defensive line numbers. We got Warner, Greenlaw, Burks, Graham, Winters at linebacker, and we got Ward, Lenore, Thomas, Gibson, Hufanga, Brown, Womack, Odom, and Oliver in the defensive backfield with Moody, Wishnowsky, and Pepper. Croc just denying the opportunity to bring back Robbie Gould on part one of this episode. That was a shocker to me. I thought for sure you're going to say, "Oh, dude, redshirt the rookie and bring back Robbie Gould. I don't want to be missing any playoff kicks."
I got to figure out what this kid is.
All right.
You see the kicker for the Browns, Kate York? He was a 4th-round draft pick last year. They just cut him.
Did they? Yeah. It's common. It's more common. Like you don't find your kickers in the draft, early in the draft especially. It's just not what happens in the NFL. But we see people try every year. It's like, nope, this is the guy. It's like, nope. Good kickers are in their 30s and on their second, third team. It's the weirdest thing. And usually undrafted. All right. Thanks, everybody, for checking in with us here on Locked On 49ers every day, making us your first listen. Make sure you are an everydayer, and we'll find out who actually does make the San Francisco 49ers roster. And, of course, first thing Wednesday morning in your feeds, we will have that for you. And we'll even have it probably Tuesday evening on YouTube after Cut Down Day. We'll talk to you then right here, Locked On 49ers.
Subscribe to this video.